What's up, everybody? Troll speaking. Today we are going to talk about how to become a really good front-end engineer in 2024. I've designed a special mind map for you that will help you to cover every important aspect of front-end development. And also for other type of developers who also want to master front-end engineering to become a full stack or just move to front-end, this mind map will be helpful for you also. So stick around, let's get started. As you might guess from our previous tutorial for .NET Engineering Roadmap, my preferable entry point for software development is actually software fundamentals. In our software fundamentals, we should cover every simple and easy concepts for getting started. This is your entry point. You first need to start from software fundamentals. Before moving to any programming language, it is always preferable to understand the common ideas we use in any type of programming language. Okay, so for software fundamentals, we have programming paradigms. Of course, it is not possible for you to cover all these object-oriented functional programming, procedural programming paradigms completely. And of course, our plan is not to cover these paradigms completely in a software fundamentals section, but our purpose is to just understand what is object-oriented programming, what is functional programming, what is procedural programming. Okay, then it is totally okay for us to move forward with data types, variables, operators, control flow, because we are using these concepts in any type of modern programming languages, okay? And we need to understand functions, of course. For the memory management, it is totally okay to just understand the basics, because you don't need to dive into details of memory management from the first topic, but the basic understanding will be enough. And of course, software fundamentals is approximately equal to algorithms and data structures. You need to understand how to create basic data structures, why we have data structures, how to work with data structures, the common algorithms applied to these data structures. Okay, and for the front-end engineers, of course, we have special topic called Web Essentials. This is the must-have topic for you. In our Web Essentials, we should cover the web protocols, basics of HTML, CSS. Of course, this is not a complete HTML, CSS, but the basic understanding of HTML. What is HTML? What is CSS? How they are working? Why we use HTML and CSS? This type of essential skills will be enough. And we need to understand how this web is working, how we are sending requests, how we are getting response, the client-server technology, the request-response process, request header, the response header, and also request-response processes, and how all these things fit together. Okay, this is our software fundamentals that any front-end engineer should know. After learning our software fundamentals, we are moving forward with HTML and HTML5. In our software fundamentals, we just covered what is HTML, what is CSS, how they fit together, why we use HTML, why we use CSS. And in our HTML, HTML5 section, we are going to dive into details of HTML technology. We need to start with fundamentals. You need to understand the head, body, the elements, attributes, tags related to HTML, and my preferable option to at least master 50 HTML most important, mostly used tags. Okay, and one of them is also going to be your forms, because we are actively using forms. In our forms is a little bit different because it is a subtopic. In HTML, it has a lot of attributes, a lot of elements, so you need to master it, because we are using forms to interact with server, to send some information to our server. Okay, and the next topic is going to be our semantic HTML. For me, it is one of the important topic in HTML, and also this is a bit complex, especially for newbies. You need to understand how to design your HTML using HTML tags properly. You need to understand how to use, I don't know, the section, article, main, footer, header type of text, nav text, especially the semantic text you need to understand, and how to use them properly, because we have older design mechanism using divs. We have newer design mechanisms in our HTML5. It brings a lot of new HTML tags, semantic tags. You need to understand why we are using this semantic tags, how they are affecting to our search engine optimization, to our design. And then we have in our HTML, we have embedded content. Especially to make our HTML content rich, we are using video, frames, audio, image files. These are going to be our embedded content, so you need to understand them. They are really simple topic, but anyway, you need to learn these tags. We have client-side storage in our HTML. HTML5 brings a lot of API with it to work with JavaScript, and from the HTML5 perspective, you need to master this socketing mechanism, storage mechanism, the etc. type of APIs, SVG, and they are really important to create modern web applications. Okay, and of course I always prefer to practice, because HTML is not just learning tags. Okay, you may know 100 tags. This is totally okay, but it doesn't mean that you will use and you can use these HTML tags. For me, just learn 40-50 tags, but with knowing how to use them, when to use them, it is better than just learning HTML tags from W3 schools and not to know when to use them. Okay, so do a lot of practice. Just select any web page from the internet, take any web page, try to investigate it. In our browsers, modern browsers, we have ability to investigate. When you hit F12, I guess for all browsers it is working, so you will see the HTML semantics, you will see the HTML tags, CSS properties for the given web page. And using this investigation mechanism, for me, is the best option to learn and master HTML and CSS. After learning HTML5, we are moving forward with CSS3. Okay, so as you can see, I have added HTML, HTML5, CSS, CSS3. So HTML5 and CSS3 as a technology, they are bringing a lot of features. For example, one of the important features of HTML5 is going to be your semantic elements. In our CSS3, we have a lot of cool stuff that helps us to use JavaScript less than previous CSS. So I always prefer to start from CSS, start from HTML, rather than starting from HTML5, CSS3. So, but it is totally up to you. You can directly start from HTML5, CSS3, because HTML5 covers all old HTML mechanisms. CSS3 covers old CSS property mechanisms with few changes, of course. So in our CSS3, we have fundamentals. Of course, in any topic, we have fundamentals. We need to start from the selectors. You need to understand the priority of these selectors. What are the selectors? Why we need to use these selectors? We have declaration mechanisms. So we in our CSS, we have property value. You need to master 30, 40 CSS property with their values, because one property may have multiple values. And for the fundamental topic, we have box model. This is, for me, one of the important topic in CSS that needs to be covered, because in our box model is going to be the initial point for your layout techniques. Okay, so in our box model, you need to understand this padding, margin, etc. type of things, how we are starting to design with CSS. Okay, we have building blocks for styling. I guess this section is going to be really easy, one of the easiest sections. So you need to understand working with typography, font size, font family, etc., with colors, backgrounds. They are really interesting and they are really cool and easy stuff to cover. We have layout techniques. So in CSS, if you ask me to tell 5 important topics, one of them is going to be layout techniques. And for the modern days, we are using flex and grid. But for me, it would be also better for you to understand the floating mechanism. Floating is a little bit old mechanism. We have also old table type of designing that we don't need to cover. But it would be better at least to understand the history of layout techniques, what was first, then how they modified it, and in modern day, what type of techniques we are using. So covering it, let's say, is an intermediate topic. It is not easy, not hard, but intermediate topic. In our CSS, we have responsive design. This is also one of the important topics in our CSS, for you need to understand the media queries, positioning, transition, animation. This is really important for you to design modern web pages, okay? And beyond basics, for our CSS3, we have preprocessor CSS frameworks. They help us to easily interact with CSS, because in CSS3, we have some manual operations that we don't need to write every time, and using preprocessors, you can easily do it, and also to not to write everything from scratch every time in your web pages. For our CSS frameworks, we have Bootstrap, Tailwind. Of course, we have a lot of CSS frameworks, but at least you need to master one of them. You need to understand the philosophy behind these CSS frameworks. And for the newbie, you may start to implement your own CSS framework. It is not important to cover all aspects, but the idea is try to create your own CSS framework using your CSS skills that we covered in these sections, and it will help you to understand the idea, the logic behind CSS mechanisms, okay? And of course, what we can do without practice, it is always better to cover these CSS properties with practice rather than covering all CSS without practicing them, okay? Just learn 50, 60 CSS properties, the most used CSS properties, but with knowing how to and when to use them. This is really important, okay? Don't try to cover all CSS in this section. It is totally okay for you to cover some CSS properties in a learning process, in a working process also, okay? For me, the better option is to create your HTML skeleton and then try to apply your CSS knowledge to make it better. Just create one HTML skeleton and using different CSS to make this HTML web page to look different, okay? So you have one skeleton, you have multiple design, they are completely different, but they are using one single skeleton. This is one of the good practice mechanisms for you to cover HTML and CSS together. And one of the important topics for front-end engineers to cover is going to be our JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language. HTML5, CSS3, they are technologies, but JavaScript is a programming language. So it has more topic rather than HTML5, CSS3, and it has a bit complex topics rather than the technologies we mentioned, okay? So where you should start to learn it, from where you should start to learn it? Well, as always, start from the fundamentals. Just try to cover core concepts. So in our software fundamentals, we covered variables, types, control flow operators. And now it is time to map this idea to JavaScript. Just try to implement these variables, types, control flow using JavaScript, okay? And we have one of the easiest topics in JavaScript is going to be DOM manipulation. And it is a practical topic because in practice, you are seeing what you are doing. So this is really important. You are interacting with DOM elements. You need to understand document object model, how to add element, how to remove elements, how to update element, etc. And using DOM manipulation, you can create your own special applications. For example, for me, the preferable option always was first to demonstrate DOM manipulation using payment terminal, okay? So for example, this is one of the examples. So you have a payment terminal, you have some elements in this payment terminal, and you can create this payment terminal elements in runtime using DOM. So this is a good practice for you to practice DOM. Now, of course, we have a lot of options, but for me, this is a really good practical example to cover DOM manipulation. One of the biggest sections in JavaScript is going to be building interactive web pages. For the interactivity, we need to understand events, event listeners. We need to master asynchronous programming. So if you ask me, the 5 huge and important and complex topics in JavaScript, one of them is going to be asynchronous programming. So for the asynchronous programming, you need to master callbacks, promises, async await keyword. You need to understand what is the problem with callbacks, why we are overusing promises, why we have async await, how we are using, when we are using these keywords, let's say. And also I have added jQuery here. jQuery helps us to build interactive web pages. Nowadays, modern design in most cases doesn't require jQuery, but to support old school codes, legacy codes, and also to learn JavaScript in more detail, at least to simulate some your JavaScript skills, you need to understand jQuery. So what you can do is you can learn jQuery and try to write your own jQuery library. Of course, it is not important to cover all functionalities of jQuery, but at least simulating it will help you to learn everything in practice. Okay. For the JavaScript, we have some advanced topics. Yeah, we have object-oriented programming. This is not a object-oriented programming in software fundamentals. Of course, you need to learn object-oriented programming in practice. You need to understand the concepts of classes, objects. You need to understand inheritance, polymorphism, and not just object-oriented programming, but modern JavaScript is using prototype-oriented programming. You need to understand and differentiate prototype-oriented programming from object-oriented programming. And in our advanced topics, we have modules and frameworks. In JavaScript, in modern ECMAScript, we have modules. And of course, we have cool frameworks nowadays, which isolates you from the JavaScript itself, let's say. So you can use React, Angular, Vue.js. If you want to understand the differences between them, which one to prefer, I will create another video tutorial about it. But it depends from, of course, your preparation, from your company's preparation, and from your plan. Because, for example, if you are planning to work with some Europe companies, you need to learn React. For other companies, they are requiring Angular. So depending from requirement, you may master one of them. For example, I really love working with React, with Vue.js. Angular is also cool, but it is a bit hard to master it rather than React. So for your initial point, it would be better to start from React. This is my preparation. Of course, this is not a dogma for you. And for the advanced topics, we have some beyond the basics topics. So we have some tools, because nowadays modern programming is not just learn programming language itself. It is more than programming language. And we have some Webpack, parcel type of libraries. We have transpiling, minification tools, and you need to learn them also to build, let's say, end-to-end JavaScript application. Okay, we have unit testing. We need to test our JavaScript functionalities to test if they are properly working or not. So mastering one of the unit test libraries would be enough for you, because learning one of them will help you to understand any of them, because at the end they are using the similar idea. Okay, and we have modern JavaScript features like sometimes it requires to follow ECMAScript standards. For example, next year, let's say they will publish the next ECMAScript standard, and you need to understand the modern requirement for modern applications. For example, arrow functions, destructions, spread operators, they are modern tools to write better. In most cases, the modern ECMAScript just provides the syntactical sugar over the old JavaScript. Okay, and the last one is going to be a practice. Of course, practice. Don't try to learn all string functions, I don't know, all other math or other type of object functions. Just try to do practice with your few knowledge rather than waiting to cover all JavaScript and start practice. Okay, just take any of the web pages, any of websites you like, and try to implement functionalities using HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and it will help you to learn, because learning is not just learning the text, learning the function names. The learning is have possibility to apply it. So work with GitHub. Just create your repository. Just try to implement in a web page. You may start to build your own web page. You build your own web page. Try to demonstrate all your skills like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you may create different web pages using React, Angular, Vue.js, and it is going to build your portfolio. Nowadays, companies prefer portfolio over your CV. So take into account that your GitHub will help you to find a better job. Well, that's all. In our next tutorial, I am planning to prepare a special roadmap for .NET full stack engineers. And if you have any questions, any suggestions about roadmaps related to front end, back end, related to full stack, just add your comment below the video and I will take into account. We'll create a separate tutorials for it. And thank you very much for watching. Just share, like, and I'll see you in the next tutorials.